So there's a difference between enduring and receiving. You have to look for yourself. So look to see what you are accustomed to in your life, how you approach life. So this is a talk. We give a term to the what's being pointed to here. We could call it's called self-realization. It's a term that's given. So to realize self, to realize who am I, and this is it's one of those things that's just in plain sight but hidden apparently, because it's everybody knows that the first most important thing is to know yourself. This is good advice given to us from most cultures through most of time. And yet, how many of us have actually stopped and looked to discover what this even is pointing to? So there's a big difference between just nodding and saying, yes, 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 I already know that, and actually looking. So you have to look and discover something of yourself that's not already known. You know, if it's already known, how it's not a discovery. That's that's just repetition. And suffering has been described in terms of repetitive history. So we can understand that that's true. So, you know, this has been pointed out. As I say, suffering has been described as repetitive history. So you can just look and see, yet another one of those things that we can just nod and say, yes, oh yes, I know. But just pause and look. So that's a lot of things all at once. So let's look at one at a time, okay? So let's start with, what is the nature of suffering? So I've suggested just now that it's repetitive history. So take a look and see right now, what is the nature of the suffering that you are fighting against, that you are certain is there, that you have to do something about? What is it? What is its nature? And you look right now. And really look for yourself and see, what is this? It's not just an intellectual exercise, but yeah, it's not excluding the intellect either, but it's not exclusively the domain of the intellect. So we can allow the intellect here, but don't make the mistake of exclusively trying to grasp it with the intellect. So just keep an open but intentional view. So open with intention. So the intention is to know, what is the nature of the suffering that I am experiencing, or trying to get rid of, or trying to overcome, or trying to compensate for, or trying to escape from? What is its actual nature? I've suggested it's repetitive history, so you could look to see if that's true. Isn't it true? You look and see, it's like there was a movie made, I don't know, 25 years ago, something like that, Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, where he repeats the same day over and over and over. And you see that that's sort of what we're doing, isn't it? We're just sort of repeating the same thing over and over and over. And if you're not repeating the same thing over and over and over, you're repeating the same avoidance over and over and over, always trying to outrun it, which works for only so long until you run out of the fuel or the whatever, the ability to maintain that constant avoidance, and then it catches up with you. So you have to see that, and you see that, yes, I'm just trying to avoid the same thing. It's just the same thing happening over and over and over and over. What you look and see, it's just, I'm trying to avoid this experience that I have an idea about. I'm trying to avoid, but I think I already know. I've already judged it. I've already drawn a conclusion. This is bad. This is the thing that's going to do me in. This is the thing that's completely unacceptable. I can't allow this. If I allowed this, then, oh, woe is me. But really, you have to look. You have to look right now. So please look right now. Don't make it an intellectual, purely an intellectual thing where you're just taking notes so that you can regurgitate it later on, because it won't work. I mean, it won't give you what you really want. So you have to look. And I understand it's uncomfortable and brings out all of the strategies that we have. So you'll notice the strategies playing out, the numbness, the going blank, the distraction, can't focus, got to think about other stuff, or whatever. Again, so we're trying to do too many things at once. We're jumping into know thyself. Let's keep it just to seeing the nature of the suffering. So can we maybe all see that, yes, it really is that just trying to avoid or somehow overcome or get rid of, or some variation on that theme, what is I've already known, what I've already drawn a conclusion about, that it's unacceptable, that's the ultimate evil that has to be avoided. Whatever that is, it's a different, got different stories, different flavors. But the essence of it, you can see, yes, I'm just so desperately trying to avoid. Now notice what that is, the experience of that. And just put it really simply, is it comfortable? It's terribly uncomfortable, isn't it? There's not a moment of real rest. So you see, this is really, now we're getting clearer on the nature of the problem. We have an idea about it, have an idea, vague or not so vague, it depends on the individual, but we've got some idea that there's something we've got to avoid, got to figure out, got to solve. That's the problem. Now it could be, you notice it could be for different people, it's at different levels. So you think, oh, I've got to avoid poverty, or I've got to avoid old age, or I've got to avoid being found out as a fraud, or I've got to, you fill in the blank with your stuff. So that's what we think about it, but then you look a little closer and you see, well, you're just trying to avoid, and this avoidance, or trying to overcome whatever compensation of some kind. But it's effort, isn't it? You see, there's an effort. Can't let that guard down. You got to constantly keep it going. How am I going to win? 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 What am I going to win? How am I going to win? Constantly, how am I going to win? Alexa, how am I going to win? How will I not die? How will I stop suffering? There's no answer to that, is there? Not in the mind, but we can look to see what is the actual nature. So you see there's effort. Okay, so hopefully we can see the nature of the problem. Let's just call it the problem. The problem, actually, look, just see, isn't it just this effort? Isn't it just really the effort? I mean, think about this for a moment, okay? There was some moment in the life stream of this person, you, this you person, and it might have been, who knows, it might have been just at the moment of conception, or it might have been for some time after that, or it might have been at some time after birth, but for some time, there was no problem. And you can't remember it, and you can't remember it because there was no problem. You can only remember the problem. You can't remember no problem. There's nothing to reference. So there was no problem. And then the problem started. Now, notice the difference between no problem and problem. I mean, prior to the problem, and you say, well, I just said you can't remember. Yes, it's true, you can't remember, but you kind of can remember. And I'll point out why you can kind of remember. You can't remember with the mind, but you can remember in another way. The body remembers. The body remembers for sure. It knows, because you know the difference, because it happens. Even though I say there's no rest for the mind, but there are moments of rest, and these moments of rest we ignore because we're so fixated on the mind and identified with the mind, constantly trying to solve the problem of the mind. But there are moments, in fact, many moments. In fact, it's the majority of what we call time, but we don't notice it, is actually no problem. And the mind's not there. You're there. And so there's a knowing, but it's not in the mind. But you can know this because somehow you just know it. You know that prior to the arising of the problem, there's just no problem. And what is the nature of no problem? It's just ease. There's no effort being made. There's nothing to defend. There's nothing to get. There's nothing needed. There's nothing to protect against. There's a complete oneness. There's no division. There's no badness, wrongness, shame, regret, remorse, fear, anxiety. None of that's there. Those are all functions of the mind. But you notice in that moment of no problem, there's just ease. And ease is like, doesn't even do it justice. It's just a complete absence of any notion of anything other than what the word ease points to. But you notice, like the word ease, as soon as I say the word ease, it carries with it the opposite. That's the nature of the language. That's the nature of thinking, is it's polarized. So ease is only really exists in contrast to dis-ease. But the really the essence of what ease is pointing to, not the word, not the concept, not the idea, but not even the experience necessarily, but really just the directness of what's being pointed to, the reality. There's no opposite to it. It's just, there's not even any notion of anything that could not be that. And that's our nature, well, period. But we could say that's our nature prior to the arising of the sense of the problem. Okay, so let's just review. I know it's a lot. It's an enormous amount, actually. It doesn't seem like a lot. I mean, to the mind, it's not a lot because the mind can take notes on that. So we got it. I'm ready for the test. What's the problem? The problem is disease. What's the problem? The problem, I mean, it can, we could come up with 5 words and we'd be done as far as taking a test would be concerned with. But you know that that doesn't offer real satisfaction. So again, it's like trying to eat the menu. It won't give you the nourishment that you're longing for, and you're a starving person. I mean, we have to get clear on that. That's the only reason we're here. If we were not starving, we wouldn't be here. We'd be out doing other stuff. Why on earth would you be here if you're not starving? I mean, there's so many other things to do, much more entertaining. So we're starving for true nourishment, not, we've got an overabundance of false nourishment. So that's there, but you see, it's like everybody's overweight on false nourishment. I don't mean physical body necessarily, but I mean overweight, like we're overburdened. The mind is carrying around so much garbage. We're just tremendously overweight. And so it comes from an overabundance of false nourishment. And we can't stop ourselves on binging on that false nourishment because there's an absence of true nourishment. So we're starving despite the fact that we're overweight. Hopefully that's clear. And you can sense that in yourself. It's like, yes, I have everything I need, but I'm dying. So when we have this clarity, then we can really look to see sincerely, not just to get the bookish answer, but to look really and get the real truth, which is what will offer the real nourishment. And the real nourishment is not always what we've thought of as being tasty. So we've got to be willing to understand that. It might taste a little bitter or a lot bitter, but it's the real nourishment. So when we clearly can see that we just can't take any more of the false nourishment, that it's killing us, that we're being crushed by all of that burden that we're carrying around, we can let go of all the ideas, at least for a moment. I mean, God knows you'll pick them up again. We all do. Okay, so, but just for this moment, we can be willing because of the sincerity, because of the seeing of the truth in this one moment, we can see, I can't take this burden of this garbage, and we just set it down. It's that easy, just for an instant. And then there's it's like a breath of fresh air. This true nourishment is revealed. And as I say, it may taste bitter. It may not be what you have been accustomed to understanding as true nourishment, but here it is. So now you can see, not with the mind, at least not exclusively, but in truth, just in this open, innocent way, that I've been suffering under this chronic efforting. And what I'm truly longing for is this surrender. I'm truly longing for that. You see, we've been given this idea that we need to be independent, we need to be strong, we need to be powerful, we need all these things. But and there's truth to that. But you see, all those things are actually just inherent. They're not something that can be had by the individual. They're the nature of what it is to be. But when we're making the effort, this is the important point, when we're making the effort to get and hold those things, the false ideas, the false images of those things, then what happens is we're actually squeezing the life out of ourselves. So no nourishment can really enter, it's like a sponge that's constantly being squeezed. What can enter it? It's only the moment that, it doesn't matter how much water is passing through the sponge. If it's being squeezed, nothing can enter it. But the moment that we release that squeezing, then it just sucks up the water. So that's really what's going on, is that we see that I'm making this effort, chronically, day in and day out, trying to be successful, trying to protect myself, trying to achieve, trying to win, and or just trying to survive, I mean, that's maybe trying to win maybe sounds way too ambitious. Just trying to survive, just trying to get by, just trying to get through, just trying to, just get through to tomorrow. But the amount of effort involved in that makes it so that this is where you really have to look and see. This is, again, the repetitive history. It's like, no matter how the different days look, actually, in essence, they're all the same. It's a rearranging of the furniture at best. And so what is it that at the core is being repeated? And I'm pointing it out, but you have to look and see it for yourself. It's this squeezing, and this squeezing or this armoring, this efforting. So do you see how even right now, there's an effort trying to grasp, trying to get it, trying to understand it, trying to do something with it, trying to obtain it for yourself. I need to get it for myself. So you see how it just there, it's habitual. Now, so we can see that this effort this has to be seen clearly, that this effort is squeezing the life out of life. This is the essence of suffering. It is to be a fish in the ocean and yet dying of thirst. This is where we find ourselves. I can't breathe. And if you say, I can't breathe, and somebody says, there's air all around. Now, hold on a second. Now, the person who says, what's wrong with you? There's air all around. They think they've got the answer. And the person who's, we could write that in a book and it could be a best-selling book. And people will walk around and they'll say, oh, I've got the best answer now because I read that book. And that was such a smart answer. It is a smart answer, but you see, we can take the smartest answer and it does us no good because we don't really know it. We actually don't know it. We think we know it. The mind has that it's filed it away so it can reference it, but we don't really know what it's pointing to. Because if we really know what it's pointing to, then we see more clearly that it's not so simple. That's just superficial. To say, you're surrounded by air, just breathe. That's like the kind of answer that's given to so many things, because this manifests in a million different ways. You see, it's like anger problems, anxiety, depression, all these different ways that it manifests. And the answers are given, well, we just need to, you just need to sort out these things here around you. You just need to, you're just crazy, but we'll sort it out. Don't worry. And that's the same kind of thing. Like, what do you mean you can't breathe? There's air. You're crazy. But notice the experience is not helped by that answer. Knowing that I'm surrounded by air doesn't help me if I can't breathe. So we have to look more carefully and see what is it that's preventing that. Because it's not enough just to say that I'm surrounded by air or I'm a fish in the ocean surrounded by water. It's not enough, because there's something that is happening, and that something that's happening is the experience, and that experience is what we are struggling with. And the experience is legitimate. I can't breathe. I'm starving. I can't breathe. However various ways we want to, whatever metaphors or whatever we want to use, this is the actual experience. So please understand, when I say all these things, it's not to say there's no suffering, you're a fool, you're crazy. No, the suffering is awful. But what I am saying is that we can see that um, it is not what we've thought it was, and this has to be seen, because you notice that when we speak of these things, there's who's suffering. I'm suffering, right? I mean, we can pretend like we have compassion and care about others, but really we just care about ourselves. So, if you're not suffering, you don't care. You only care because you're suffering. So who's suffering? I'm suffering. Okay. And then there's the suffering experience. So I'm the victim of the suffering experience. So there's some kind of, however we formulate it, there's something that's happening, and it's happening to me. The suffering is happening to me. Somebody's doing something to me, or life is doing something to me, or somehow something, I'm being oppressed or victimized by this suffering. So the suffering is external, but it's affecting me. You have to see, this is how we formulate it for ourselves and understand it. This is the framework we're working with. This is how we are operating. And if you don't agree with that, then I really strongly encourage you to two things. One, look, drop the ideas that you have and the argumentativeness, and just look innocently and see if you can see it for yourself. And the second thing is, if you really sincerely look and you're not clear on that, then during the Q&A, let's talk about it so that we get clear on it, because it's really, I see that it's essential. Without this, we will just keep on doing what we've been doing, which has been, well, I'm going to give it away, generating that suffering. So, but we think that the suffering's being something being done to us. So this is so important to understand, because look, for a moment, imagine that you drop all your strategies. You know what you're afraid of. You know what you obsess over, right? You know all the things that you're fixated on. You know what troubles you. You know what you're afraid of and paranoid about and all these other things. So so look and see how day in and day out you are occupied by that, and you're making effort around that. And now imagine, just for one moment, imagine that you drop all of that. Don't do any of those things for one moment. Just imagine. You don't even have to drop it for a moment. Just imagine that you drop it for a moment. If you really do this sincerely, and it does take, you have to be willing to really look for yourself. You can't just think about it. You have to look. But when you look and you sincerely do this, then you'll see, I'm certain you'll see that you're terrified. You're absolutely terrified of not doing those things. We're still looking just at the nature of suffering. We have to get clear on it. Because if we allow ourselves to continue to believe that we have some external enemy, what is that saying? I've seen the enemy and he is me, or something. I am he, or something. If we keep thinking that the enemy is out there, then we can keep on going for lifetimes suffering, because we don't have any true recognition of the actual nature of suffering. So we have to see, what is the actual nature of suffering? You look right now, see what I'm pointing out. It's not difficult. You don't have to think about it a great deal. You just have to look and see it for yourself. That I'm terrified of not making the effort. I'm terrified of not making the effort. And if that's not clear to you, then you have to imagine for a moment that the thing that you're most afraid of is happening and you don't make the effort that you would otherwise make. Because we've all got some fears. Everybody's got some fears, something that is occupying a great deal of your whatever, your you. You've been occupied. You see, you are occupied. You are possessed by this condition, and it's peculiar to each of us. We've each got it's a special flavor for each person. But you look and see, you imagine the thing, whatever it is. I mean, you just have to see it. I hope you can be honest enough to see that. If not, please, again, during the Q&A, you've got to bring it up. Because if this is just passive, if it's just like entertainment, then please don't do that. Because it's a tremendous waste of time. But, and you've got to be willing to be exposed. So if you've got something where you say, oh, I'm too nervous and shy and I don't want anybody to know that I've got this particular anxiety or whatever, then get over it. And just, if you can't get clear on it yourself, that's what we're here for, is to be, support. So, okay, enough on that. Hopefully you can see it. So now, look, in this one, if you imagine that this thing is happening, the thing that, to you is completely the worst, and you notice what you normally would do, the effort that you normally make, and you might think, I don't make any effort. Look more closely. See, again, if that's the case, you don't have any clue about how much effort is being made. It's once you sensitize yourself to it, you start to see it's enormous, the amount of effort, even when you think nothing's going on. You think you're not doing anything, but you're making so much effort. And it's profoundly painful, and it generates this whole nightmare. Pardon me for being honest about it. So you see, if you imagine the worst thing, whatever that is for you, you've got your own thing, but you imagine that, and then imagine you don't do the thing that you would normally do. You don't think about it. You don't make that, you don't tense up in that way. You don't Google it. You don't, whatever. You don't go to your friends and talk about it. You don't do any of these things. You don't ruminate. You don't do any of these things. Imagine you don't make any of that effort. Whew. Now you can get clear, right? I mean, if you see, then you see how terrified you are of making no effort. So now, look, it's all laid out. I'm just pointing it out for you. Now you see that here is, I think I've my whole life up to this moment, this is what I want you to see, is that up to this moment in my whole life, I've thought, even though I didn't necessarily know I thought this, but now I can see that I thought that the suffering was due to some external enemy. Even if I thought, oh, well, it's internal, it's the anxiety, it's the depression, it's the this, it's that. Still, it's like we've made that somehow, we've externalized it. There's me and there's it. And so then we're in battle, and we've got to fight against it. And so we're making this effort. Now you got to see it. But look, in this one moment, if you just for one instant, even just imagine not making any effort, can you see it? There's no problem, is there? In the one moment of making no effort, there's no problem. Well, I hope it's clear. Look, let's review it again. So, we have to review it because otherwise I know very well, how it works. I mean, I'm very experienced. You see, if the doubts come up, and they'll dismiss it and say, yeah, whatever. But now how do I fix my problem? Yeah, that was great, but now what do I do? So we have to see it again. So look again. For one moment, you just imagine that you make no effort and see that in this one moment, there's no problem. So now you have to just keep seeing that as many times as is necessary before it dawns on you, because it has to just click that there's this clarity of there's no problem when there's no effort. Every time there's effort, there's a problem. When there's no effort, there's no problem. Every time there's effort, there's a problem. Wait a second. The effort is the problem. The problem isn't some other thing. The problem is only the effort. Now, we're halfway there. So look, this effort, now you have to get clear on this, because otherwise what happens is, I know from, again, from experience, the mind is going to take that and it's going to distort it and back into the same thing. So we have to get really, really clear. So you've got to pin this down and look at it, okay, with laser focus for a moment and see, okay, so what is the nature of this effort? Okay, the effort is the problem, but we can't let ourselves get away with thinking, oh, now I've got the answer. Okay, that's like bookish knowledge. Oh, I know the answer, but see, it's not embodied. It's not really known, because we can then allow the mind to distort it, and we say, now I know the answer, but then it's objectified again. So now we say, oh, well, the problem is the effort. And so now I've got to get rid of the effort. Yeah, just see, this is what happens. So look and see the effort. What is the nature of the effort? I don't know what I can say about this. You just have to look and see that this, what is the nature of this effort? This effort, is it, let me ask this, is the effort separate from you? Can you find where you end and the effort begins? So you have to look closely and see. Now, when you're really looking in this way, if you're sincere, then something happens. Because, and I'm pointing this out just so that you don't waste time. Okay, so if you're not, if this think something hasn't happened yet, then you just keep looking. But if there's something has happened, I want to point it out for you, which is it all just sort of falls apart. And you just give up. You can't find out what do you even mean, me and it and this and there and who and where. You don't know. There's nothing like that. There's no such thing. Okay, so this is, you reached the limit of the mind and then you went right over the edge. Okay, great, excellent. So then don't try to climb back up and reassemble it. Just allow for this clarity. If you, when I say don't try to climb back up and reassemble it, I mean, don't keep trying to think about it, because all the thinking is dualistic. All the thinking is trying to sort it out. But when you go right over the edge and you find yourself here, what you find is something that you can't do that with it. It can't be sorted out. You can't fit it into some slot somewhere. It just doesn't work, you see, because you look and see, again, you just look right now and see where do you end and the effort begins. So you have to look, close the eyes and just observe that for a moment. And you'll see what happens is it's like you push the envelope, you go right to the edge of this dimension, and then it just sort of poofs. Okay, there's no, now there's no, it's not either or. It's not black and white. It's not self and non-self. You're just left with this wide openness. Okay. So now this wide openness, we usually find that is difficult to really hang out here too long because we just start flip-flopping. So that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's not problematic. We had to, so we looked at the nature of suffering. Okay, so then we want to look at this, know thyself, who am I? So we've moved, so in looking at the nature of suffering, we moved beyond the mind. We moved beyond the dualistic nature of the mind. And so we just find ourselves with this direct realization. Okay, so this direct realization is where we discover the answer, if we want to call it the answer to this question of who am I? Unless we look in this way, then we'll still be looking at the mind, and the mind can't possibly give us that answer because the mind is only going to be able to give us ideas, which are all dualistic, as we've already seen. So the moment we talk about self, then the mind is looking for self. It's looking for what is not self. It's trying to differentiate self from non-self. But you look here, if you're, if you've been following along in this, notice this shift where you can't grasp it anymore. The mind just has to give up because it can't. It just can't grasp, where do I end and the efforting begin? You can't find it with the mind, but it points you to here. So then just notice that this here who is here. You don't need the mind for this one. I mean, maybe you need the mind to give you a word for it, but that can just be handled very lightly. But before even needing a word for it, it's obvious who's here. I am. Now, please don't try and do something with this, because that's a mistake. If you try to do something with it, then you'll just you'll see what happens, right? You notice if you're trying to do something with it, what's happening is you're making effort again. So that effort is what creates this sense of division, separation. All of a sudden, at first it doesn't seem like much, but then it builds and it builds, and pretty soon you start feeling like, I got a problem again. I don't even know where this problem came from, but I'm suffering. I got to find a solution to this. So just nip it in the bud, just drop it. But you have to trust in this. So we're, trying to take this somewhat systematically, but we first see the nature of the problem, the nature of suffering. Then we see that the nature of suffering is actually, we call it effort, but then what is this effort? The effort is actually delusion or illusion. What's here actually is I am. and I am is not divided. There's nothing else. So you see this for yourself directly. Now so this is, I know it's a lot, but we look to see the nature of suffering, and we look to see what is here. I am undivided, formless. Okay, now we've got the next step, so to speak, is we could call it integration, because there's this constant reemergence of this conditioning, the mind, everything that we think we know. So the one popular, but I think dangerous and frankly pretty stupid idea is that we have this revelation, this recognition of the self, and then like some fantastic fireworks explosion, all the suffering is demolished, and then from that moment forward, there's personal experience of bliss. So if you're looking for that, good luck. That's not what I'm about. And honestly, if you just look sincerely, if you really follow along directly with everything that's been pointed out, you'll see the flaw in that. You'll see how absurd it is. But what is definitely available is that this is directly seen, and then there's an integration. So this violent notion of the obliteration of the egoic self and all of that in one fell swoop is, maybe it happens. I know there are some who report that, but even if it happens, it doesn't seem to be happening for you, does it? And as I said, I don't think you want that. So you're lucky. I mean, that might be very, very, very difficult. But this next step is this integration. So there's this continual reemergence. You can look at, it's kind of like the tide coming in and out of the ocean. Okay, so as the tide goes out, you see all, this ocean floor is exposed. Then the tide comes in, and then it comes back out, and so there's this process of ebbing and flowing. So there's this dance, this play, and at first we tend to, because the identification with this egoic self is still so strong, we tend to look at it like, oh, I had this experience, but what good does it do me? How do now it's gone, and I don't know what to do. How do I fix myself, right back into the same old thing? But with enough experience, what starts to happen is we start to realize there's another shift. So, first there's just this shift where we realize, whoa, I am. Whether the mind is here or not, whether there's effort or not, whether there's appearance or not, I am. So that's an enormous shift. As I've pointed out before, most people will never experience that. I don't think, it doesn't seem, in this lifetime. So that's huge, but we've been misled into thinking that that's the be all end all, and actually that's just That's just the first step, that's just like enormous, but itty bitty. So that happens, this shift of this realization, I am, okay. But then we're in and out, seem to be in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. Got it, lost it, got it, lost it. So that's coming from this still more identified as the egoic self, because the egoic self is the only thing that's got it and lost it. You notice the reality of I am, there's nothing got or lost. It doesn't change. I am. But what happens is there's a certain experience of I am that is equated with I am, and that experience comes and goes. That is no doubt about it. Again, there's a difference between the tide is in and the tide is out. Let's not deny that. There's a difference. But the tide in or the tide out is still an ocean. So when we're still identified most strongly with this egoic self, then when the tide is out, we say, well, that was an experience, but it's gone, and now, oh, woe's me, what do I do? But we keep having that experience, and then what starts to happen is another shift. And I'm pointing it out because you can just say, oh, I have to wait for that to happen. No, you can be actively engaged. You keep on allowing for this experience, and each time the experience occurs, you look carefully and you recognize I am. So in this, it says 11:57 on my clock here. So in the remaining minutes, you could, a dozen times, you could have this experience, and you can look each time. And each time you look, what happens is you get clearer that I am. So I am. And what you just start to realize I am. But you see, what we're accustomed to is, because we identify as this, what we think of as solid, so not solid at all, but we think of it as solid and something because we're gripping. Say, this is who I am. This is real. And so we're back trying to fit that experience into this. And so it's like we keep on standing on the shore, to extend that metaphor of the ocean and the tide. We just keep on standing on the shore because we say, this is the only place I'm safe, which is halfway true for the egoic self. But I mean, you see, regardless of anything, the shore is there, the ocean is there, the shore is there, the ocean is there. You go, into the depths of the ocean, the shore is still there. You're just not on the shore. But we're worried, we're afraid. You see, again, all of this efforting, the suffering, is coming out of this fear that if I don't do it, if I don't keep reasserting that I am this person, I have these problems, I'm protecting myself, I'm getting it done, I'm getting somewhere, I'm doing all these things. If we don't keep asserting that, then this one who I think I am is going to disappear, and that will be oh so sad. So we keep playing, dancing that dance, and that's normal, but if we keep looking, and again, I'm inviting you, you can still do it dozens more times in the next few minutes. You just keep looking, you let go for an instant and tell the truth. You notice I am, even when there's no effort being made. And you can just imagine no effort being made. You don't even have to stop the effort. You can just imagine stopping the effort. You can just imagine that the efforting just stops. That's even better. You just imagine that. And in that imagination, you can see, and maybe in some ways that's even better, because then you take this idea that you're doing the stopping out of the picture. You just see, I'm just imagining that the efforting stops. And this is amazing because just imagining gives you this experience. And it doesn't have to be some enormous dramatic experience. It can be very, very, very simple and subtle. And that's better in many ways. And then you just look right now and see in this one moment when I imagine that it stops, you notice actually there is a stopping, and that stopping is it's subtler than what you're accustomed to looking at. But this reveals to you in this one instant that everything is stopped, and yet I am. So you do this many, many times, and then what happens is you start to realize, oh, I am. Before I thought, oh yeah, I got it, I am. But then you start to realize, oh, I am. This idea, I am, like, it's useless, more garbage. But to the direct revelation, I am, you start to realize that. So now it's like you're standing there, half in the water. And the tide comes in, and then it's up to here. But and can be very uncomfortable. I'm not gonna see, this is a big mistake, is we think, oh, it should be comfortable. Once I have this realization, it should be comfortable. So who? Why? So you just keep looking and see, I am. Okay. And for our purposes, this is all we want, actually. You might have thought I was going somewhere else with it, like we're going to all go to the bottom of the ocean, but why? Why is that necessary? See, that's what I'm saying. That's not really our path. You got internet access. So I know you're not up in the Himalayas in a cave. So it's not for us. That way is not for us. We're not going, you go up, the higher you go up, the deeper you are in the ocean. So that's not for us. And it's only because of some nonsense idea that we have that we say, oh, well, that's the only good way, and that's the only truth, and anything less than that is inferior. And I don't like what I hear you proposing. That sounds terrible. Well, it's only an idea, you see. So again, you just imagine making no effort for one instant, and you just tell the truth, which is, oh, it's all good. There's no problem. All is well. I am. You can't just, I mean, to be clear, when I say you tell the truth, I'm not saying you just say those words. I'm saying you have to look and directly discover that for yourself, but it's not hard. It's the easiest thing. Then when I say it's the easiest thing, I mean, it's the easiest thing, but it's also the hardest thing. Hard only because we're so afraid. But that's why I say you don't have to make it so scary. You just imagine for one moment, not making any effort. You imagine something scary happening, and you imagine in that one moment when the scary thing is happening, you're not making any effort. And you see how powerful that is. We can be dismissive of the power of imagination, but actually everything that we're constantly fixated on is only imagination. So that's the power of imagination for you. We're, every single one of us is deluded by imagination. Imagination is extraordinarily powerful. I told the story last week, the story of Narada and Krishna. That's how powerful it is. We're talking about the power of creation. We're not talking about some triviality. We're talking about that which cannot be separated from the totality. It's enormous. It's beyond enormous. It's beyond any dimension. So it's not trivial. It's very, very, very non-trivial. And so you can utilize imagination intelligently. So you just imagine again, right now, please remember it's always an invitation to look for yourself right now. Don't put it off. Imagine in this one moment that the worst is happening, the scariest, and that you're not making any effort. No effort is happening, just for one moment, just in imagination. But see, in this moment, as it's imagined, that's gives a real experience in which you can look. So the experience is only part of it. The experience just offers the opportunity for the looking. So there's the experience, but don't get too hung up on that. You don't have to extend the experience forever. It's that you have the experience gives the opportunity to look, and in the looking, there's the recognition, I am. So even in this instant, when what's imagined is the worst, and there's no effort, no defending, no anything, no effort of any kind in this one instant, I am. And the mind might say, but that's not real. It's very real. It's just as real as anything else. More real in many ways. So you just keep doing that, and then you see, I am. So this is the, and then as I say, we're looking for integration. We're not looking to check out. That's not our path. I am sorry to deliver that news to you, but I'm not really sorry. I just know that it might be a blow to your to your ego, but your path is not to go and blast off into space from the Himalayas. Sorry to inform you. Your path is to be right where you are and to tell the truth. And that is more than enough. I promise you. I really promise you, it's more than enough. It's a wonderful thing. So don't try and you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to achieve anything else. There's nothing else that's needed. This is it right now. So if you followed along, then the essential recognition has been had repeatedly just in this hour. And then the next step is to we just remain. And even as we remain with this recognition, I am, and of course the experience comes and goes. So I'm not saying that the experience remains the same, but there's a recognition. And the recognition at first, it seems to waver, but you just keep seeing more and more clearly. And then that reveals that no, the recognition doesn't come and go. The recognition doesn't depend upon the experience. The recognition is possible always. And so then this is the integration. So it's like the tide is coming in and out. So life is happening. There's change occurring, apparently, ups and downs. We like it, we don't like it. So this is happening. That's the nature of life. So that's like the tide coming in and out. But we're remaining. So yes, the experience, sometimes we judge the experience as good. Sometimes we judge that the experience is bad, and everywhere in between. And we're constantly trying to evaluate, how am I doing? Am I succeeding or am I failing? But independent of all that, you just remain with this direct recognition. So that, and if you're not clear on that, you just keep on surrendering, and then just see what's here and what you'll now. So the next step, and this is the integration, is that we are like points through which this pure light of awareness shines into the creation like stars. Don't make too much of that. Don't think about it a lot, but you just loosely have that image, and you see you're an interface between what the mind says is two worlds, but really it's a singularity. And you are that which is the singularity. So now you start to recognize this light, this pure light. It seems as though it's like there's light back there and there's darkness out in front, or however you understand it. It doesn't really matter. Okay, it seems that way. It's just a way that it seems, and we can allow that imagination intelligently so that we have this image of ourselves as just this point through which the light, this portal through which the light is expressing into this world of phenomena. So we know from our observation that when we make the effort trying to fix the problem, we suffer, because that is the nature of the suffering. Well, it starts to be a little clearer why that is. Every time I'm making the effort, that portal is closing down, less light is shining, and we're looking always out here. So this gets darker. So we need to now what? Allow that portal to remain open so the light shines through. Now, what do we see? Well, whatever it is that is here to be seen, and that's going to look like whatever we have habitually interpreted. So it's just due to the conditioning. There's an impression. And we normally get spooked by it. And then we're right back into closing down and efforting. And what am I going to do? And how am I going to fix it? Oh, it's so scary. But what's different now is we just continue to allow that light to shine, and we see whatever's here, understanding that this is just what is. There's no problem. So this is the peace inquiry, and we'll just explore that together. So we start just by simply letting go or surrendering, or if you prefer, you can just imagine that you make no effort for a moment. And just recognize, even if it's just for a split second, that in this one instant of no effort, that I am, and I am whole, I am complete. There is no boundary, and there's no other, there's no conflict. There's just unconditional peace, pure light of awareness. It shines equally on all, just as the light of the sun shines equally on all, doesn't have any judgment. And so we just allow for this pure light of awareness to shine forth effortlessly. And then imagine that unconditional peace is expressing in your life, in your body, in your mind, and in your relationships. So now this light is shining forth, but also with intention. So it's focused on the whatever it is that this provokes. So as we imagine the unimaginable, which is the case, that's what we're doing. We're imagining the unimaginable, then everything that is interfering with the direct revelation of the unimaginable, it reveals itself. So you just notice whatever's there, whatever memories or images or thoughts or emotions or whatever else may present itself. And you don't have to go digging. If it seems like there's nothing, that's fine too. So it's let it be effortless. Don't strain, and you just allow. And then once more, just let go, surrender, imagine making no effort for a moment. And in this one moment, maybe just a split second, but it's fine. You just notice that what's here is I am, and that I am vast, unbounded, free, complete, satisfied, and that my nature is unconditional peace. And then imagine this unconditional peace expressing in your life as your body and your mind and your relationships. And again, don't make any effort or strain, just allow yourself to be aware of whatever's there. And For some of us, it may be that at a certain point that just remaining aware of this pure light is so enticing, so pleasurable that we just allow ourselves to naturally and effortlessly remain primarily aware of this pure light of awareness, but we may just vaguely sense some motion or change occurring. And that's great. That's fine. So if that happens, that's wonderful. On the other hand, if you find that you're very focused on the thoughts and images and whatever else, that's fine too. You just see that you can be aware of that without attaching to any particular judgment about it. You just let it come and go. So there's no way you can really fail at it as long as you're sincere. So don't worry about the particulars of your exact experience. It's really just our willingness to be present to whatever is that does the real magic. So that's it for the formal portion today. So thank you as always for joining me. Thank you for your courage and your willingness. And for those who are here live, we'll stay on for the Q&A. So let me end this recording.